Hello, and welcome back to Rooted in the Seasons, where ancient wisdom meets modern life, with a strong cup of tea and practical tools for real busy women. I'm Katja Patel, Ayurvedic diet and lifestyle educator, yoga teacher, teacher mentor. I help women find more calm and clarity through small daily rituals, seasonal rhythm, and timeless wisdom that actually fits into real life. In today's episode, I'm talking about one of my favorites, the Sankalpa, often translated as intentions. But is it really the same? So let's dive in. At the beginning of the year, we often feel this pull to set new intentions. It's almost a ritual in itself. We decide to stop smoking, eat healthier, exercise more. The gyms fill up in January, and by February, many of the classes are empty again. And it's easy to think, well, that's just how it is. People try, and then they stop. But I don't think that's the whole story. I think the real question is, why do so many intentions not work in the first place? Most of our intentions are born out of habits. Habits that have been formed over years, shaped by our working hours, our meals, our stress levels, and the way we live our daily lives. We eat lunch in front of a screen, we override tiredness, we move quickly from one thing to the next. And at some point, those habits start to feel normal. They feel like who we are. Once something becomes familiar, we repeat it. And the more we repeat it, the more comfortable it feels, even if it's unhealthy or doesn't serve us. So when we decide we want to change, we mostly stay on the surface. I want to eat better. I want to have more energy. I want to feel less tired. But we don't always look at what's actually underneath those wishes. This is why we might be only successful for a few days or a couple of weeks until something happens, and then we fall back into our old patterns. And with that, another belief gets reinforced. This is just how I am. I can't be X, Y, Z. I'm not good. I'm not disciplined enough to do. But that is a belief. It's not the truth. It's a conditioning. This is where the Sankalpa comes in. Sankalpa is an ancient concept in yoga. The word Sankalpa already appears in the Vedas, composed several thousand years ago, where it refers to a conscious resolve, often made in connection with a ritual action. Then in the post-Vedic period, particularly in the Upanishads, the emphasis begins to shift inwards. What was once primarily an outer declaration of intention becomes more closely linked to inner alignment and movement of consciousness. Later yogic and tantric traditions continue this inward turn, working with Sankalpa as a personal inner commitment rather than a formal ritual statement. Sankalpa is not a goal. It's not a superficial wish. It is a commitment, almost like saying to life, this is where I am, this is what matters now. In my own yoga practice, Sankalpa was introduced in a very specific way. It had to be short, positive, no ands or ors, without I will or I'm going to, but formulated as if it is already true. At first, that can feel strange. Why would I say something as if it's already happened when it clearly hasn't? But the Sankalpa isn't trying to convince the thinking mind. It works on the conditioned, subconscious mind, the part shaped by repetition, habits, and lived experience. That part of the mind doesn't change through explanation or willpower. It changes the same way it was conditioned in the first place, through consistency, safety, and felt truth. And this is why Sankalpa is often introduced in practices like Yoga Nidra, when the nervous system is calm and receptive. Not to force change, but to allow it. What makes Sankalpa different from ordinary intention setting is that it goes deeper. If we stay with the example of eating healthy, and we keep asking why do I want to eat better? Because I always feel tired. Why am I tired? Because I'm not living in an energy efficient way. Why am I living that way? Because somewhere along the way I stopped valuing myself enough. I feel I need to do X, Y, Z to fit in or to be accepted. Now we're not longer talking about food. Now we're talking about self-worth. And that's where a true Sankalpa forms. The Sankalpa is shaped carefully. As mentioned above, it's stated positively. It doesn't argue with the mind. It's phrased as it is present reality. Not because we're pretending, but because this kind of formulation speaks directly to the subconscious. When we repeat this quietly, once in the morning, once in the evening for 1 minute, something interesting happens. Resistance can show up. Fear can show up. Doubt can show up. And that's not a problem. On the contrary, this is a sign that the Sankalpa is reaching the right depth. Because the Sankalpa doesn't override resistance, it reveals it. It makes us aware of what still needs to change or to be addressed. Not so that we can force ourselves forward, but so we can live in a way that actually supports who we want to become or what we want to call into our lives. These days, you often hear you need to live your goals as if they have already come true. Be the person you want to become. fake it until you make it. There's a truth in this, but it's often misunderstood. Sankalpa was never about pretending or performing a better version of yourself. It was about alignment. It asks the nervous system to notice, where does my life not yet match this truth? And then it waits. This is also where the Bhagavad Gita offers an important correction. In the Gita, liberation doesn't come from fulfilling every wish. It comes when the mind no longer needs to project fulfillment into the future. When all sankalpas, or longings, wishes, and mental projections fall quiet, freedom is revealed. So the sankalpa is not meant to be practiced forever. It's a skillful means, a bridge. We use sankalpa while we're still behaving in the old ways, even when we know they don't really serve us anymore. Once your behavior changes, once you've become that person in real life, the sankalpa has done what it needs to do. A scary sankalpa is often a good one, because it usually touches something real, something that matters, something close to the heart's true desire, not a wish to become someone else, but a willingness to stop living against ourselves. Sankalpa doesn't force transformation. It patiently re-educates the subconscious mind, not by pressure, not by pretending, but by repetition, honesty, and presence. Until behavior, identity, and inner truth slowly begin to match. And when that happens, the need for sankalpa itself begins to dissolve. Okay, let's recap the essence, because we covered quite a lot. So when intentions fail, it's usually not because we lack discipline. It's because we are trying to change behavior without addressing the conditioning underneath it. The sankalpa works differently. It meets the subconscious mind where habits are formed. It reveals resistance instead of fighting it. And it stays with us only as long as we're still living from old patterns. Once behavior changes, the sankalpa has done its work. So maybe the sankalpa isn't about setting better intentions. Maybe it's about listening more honestly, listening to the habits we've been living from, listening to the resistance that shows us where change is still needed, and listening to what really matters underneath our wishes. If you're curious about working with sankalpa, I wouldn't start by trying to phrase one straight away. Instead, start by noticing patterns. Over the next few days, observe where you keep repeating the same behaviors, especially the ones that leave you tired, frustrated, or feel disconnected. You might find it helpful to write this down. not to analyze it, but to see it more clearly. When you notice a pattern, ask yourself, why do I want this to be different? And then again, ask the why. And maybe again, not to force an answer, but to let the deeper reason reveal itself. Just as we did earlier with the eating example. Very often what we think isn't the real wish, and what's underneath is something much more honest. That process of noticing, asking the why, and staying with what comes up is already part of the Sankalpa practice. Sankalpa isn't something to rush into. It reveals itself when we listen long enough. Thank you so much for listening to Rooted in the Seasons. If you enjoyed this episode, you can subscribe or follow Rooted in the Seasons on Spotify or Apple Podcast. That way, new episodes land automatically for you. If you'd like more support between episodes, you can download my free guide, my 5 quick Ayurvedic fixes to move from scattered to steady, and join my Sunday Read newsletter. You'll find all the links in the show notes. If something in today's episode resonated, I'd genuinely love to hear from you. You can connect with me on Substack, or even better, send me an email. I always read and reply to them. Until next time, stay rooted in the seasons. Bye-bye.